Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have Becca'S Bookopoly round 15. So if you guys are new here and you are unfamiliar with exactly what Bookopoly is the TBR game that I play monthly to determine what books I'm going to be reading in the coming months. If that sounds interesting to you and you would like to catch up, I will pop a link up here to January's Bookopoly, which explains the brand new board that we're using and the rules. However, if you want to get really into Bookopoly and catch up on the entire thing, I will link the Bookopoly playlist down in my description box so that you can do so. But for those of you guys who are familiar with what we're doing here, let's get straight into it and talk about what my hopes are for March's Bookopoly. So towards the end of February, I did get into a little bit of a romance kick. At the moment, it is proving hard for me to concentrate when I'm reading because all I want to read is romance. As well as that, when I did my February book haul, I did say that I would be closing my wish list at the end of February for 1 month, and if possible, I would be using March and March's Bookopoly to read through some of the books that you guys have kindly sent to me. So essentially, my hopes for March are that 1, I can read a whole ton of romance, and 2, that I can read books that you've gifted to me. Just realised that I'm a predominantly fantasy reader, so you guys haven't gifted me any romance really at all, but we'll see if we can make it work because Bookopoly is probably going to sabotage me anyway. So with March's plans laid out for you guys, let us have a look at the books that Bookopoly selected for me for February and see whether I managed to read them all. So these were my books for February. Bookopoly selected 7. It was a little bit of a challenge, but the first one was Lord of the Fading Lands by C.L. Wilson, to read a fantasy romance. We then had It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, which was a community chess card. Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins was a dystopian. Wondersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow was a middle grade. In between Wondersmith and Aurora Rising, I landed on read an ebook or an audiobook, and for that I read an e-arc of The Raven and the Dove by Caitlin Davis. Then we had Aurora Rising by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, which was a sci-fi, and finally The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, which was to read an adult fantasy. And I am happy to say that I have read every single one of these books aside from Aurora Rising, which I am 100 pages into, with a few days still to go until the end of the month. So I think I've pretty much nailed it, and you can bet I am impressed. So that is 2 successful months in a row, so you guys can bet that I am praying that Bookopoly is going to be kind to me for March so we can keep this streak going. So without further ado, let's get into our first roll. So last month we ended on adult fantasy. First roll, 7. A contemporary or a romance. So our first roll was to read a contemporary or a romance. It's like Bookopoly just knows what I want and I love it. So for this prompt, I will be reading Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman. This is the 3rd installment in Alice Oseman's young adult boy meets boy contemporary webcomic series. I really love this series. It's not something that I'm usually into, but I just think that this story is so sweet. In this, we follow Nick and Charlie. Charlie is openly gay and Nick is seemingly straight until he meets Charlie and they start a friendship, and he starts to question his feelings. So excited that I'm going to get to read this in March. I should read this pretty quickly because the frames are quite wide, but this is one of those series that completely takes me by surprise. I had no idea when I picked up volume 1 of this that I was going to love it so much, but I really do. And this was indeed a book that was gifted to me. This one was sent to me by Jamie, so thank you so much, Jamie. Roll number 2. A double 2. But that is most recent purchase. So for our second roll, we rolled a double. No surprises there. I can't actually remember the last time I got through a Bookopoly TBR without rolling a double at this point. But this time we landed on most recent purchase, and the book that I have acquired the most recently and added to my permanent collection was actually my Owlcrate book for February, which is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This is a story who follows a girl who is the princess of an island kingdom, and all her life she has been honing her power, which is to have mastery over souls. For her to solidify her place as heir to the throne, she has to demonstrate how well her control is over her powers. However, at some point in this demonstration, I believe that things go horribly wrong, which causes her to flee, and that is where she meets a mysterious pirate who I believe has a questionable crew who are going to help her regain her throne. So this one is a young adult fantasy, and it does sound like it has a standard fantasy plot. However, I do quite like those, providing that the book is well written and the characters are written well. So I'm very excited to be reading this, especially because I don't actually think I've read any of my Owlcrate books yet. So this one will be interesting. Roll number 3. 3. a graphic novel or a manga. For my third row, I landed on graphic novel or manga. Is it just me, or is Bookopoly being nice to me this month? I don't want to say anything because you know how she can be, but this seems like a pretty nice TBR so far. So for this challenge, I will be reading Orange Future by Ichigo Takano. This is sort of the third installment in the Orange manga series, which follows a young girl who receives a letter from her future self saying that if she doesn't change a few mistakes that her future self made at her age, then a boy who has recently joined their class will not be with them for much longer. I absolutely loved the Orange series. It warmed my heart. It was so sweet. I really loved the relationships in there. It had a romantic aspect that I didn't expect, and it also had the most perfect love triangle. I have been warned not to read Orange Future because this is not actually part of the core series. I believe that this is one or two short stories that take place a little after the end of the series, and a lot of people do think that the series is better if you leave it after the end of the second volume. However, I really love this series, and while I did enjoy the second volume, it did end quite abruptly, and there's a whole dynamic with that love triangle that I want to see if anything is resolved or different in this one. So I'm very excited that March will be giving me the opportunity to read this one and wrap up this series entirely. And Orange Future was kindly gifted to me by Kimberly, so thank you, Kimberly, for this one. Roll number 4. 11. An ebook or an audiobook. So rule number 4 was to read an ebook or listen to an audiobook, and this is where my romance kick is really gonna come in, because if you guys watched the last vlog that I posted, you will know that I have been on a little bit of a Colleen Hoover binge at the moment, and all of her books are available on Scribd, which I do indeed have a membership to. So a few days ago, I did ask you guys for Colleen Hoover recommendations over on Twitter, and I got a ton of replies. So I have tallied all of those up, and 2 books got exactly the same amount of votes. They were Ugly Love and Maybe Someday. So I have run an additional poll on Twitter, just a very short one, and Ugly Love has won. So in the month of March, I will be reading Ugly Love. Now I have to admit, this is one that I was a little bit put off by Colleen Hoover, and the only reason for that is that I believe that the 2 characters that we follow in Ugly Love are actually side characters in November 9, and Ugly Love does take place before it, so I kind of know what the resolution is going to be of Ugly Love, and I didn't particularly like those characters in November 9. I had nothing against them really, they were just kind of side characters and they were whatever, but I do believe in the power of Colleen Hoover's writing and her ability to manipulate me into feeling all of the feelings, so I'm pretty sure I'm actually going to love this book. So the setup for this one is that we follow Tate, who meets Miles, who is a pilot. They don't get on at all, however they do have a mutual attraction. Miles doesn't believe in love, Tate doesn't have time for it, but they do have this mutual attraction, and so they start to have sex, which is fine as long as Tate follows the 2 rules that Miles has laid out for her, which is do not ask about the past and do not expect a future. I am ready for this. I love angsty romance, which is what Colleen Hoover is known for. She gives me everything I need from a romance book, and I'm so excited that in March I can continue binging her books. Do not be surprised, guys, if you watch a reading vlog and find out that I read this one and then just went ahead and carried on reading Colleen Hoover, because she is so addictive, and when I start I just can't stop. Roll number 5. 8. A book that was gifted to me. So roll number 5 was also perfect because I landed on the gifted space, which is of course to read a book that has been gifted to me, and for that I'm going to be taking on the beast that is Peace and Turmoil by Elliot Brooks. Now you guys may be familiar with Elliot Brooks as she is a booktuber. She is pretty much where I get the majority of my adult high fantasy recommendations from, and last year she did release this chunky beast of a book. This is self-published, and while I don't normally read YouTuber books or booktuber books, I really trust Elliot's recommendations. She reads a lot of fantasy and I believe that she knows her stuff, so I decided that I would be giving this a try as I did want to support her. So this one was gifted to me by Rachel last year for my birthday, I think, so thank you so much, Rachel, for that. And I will also be buddy reading this in March with Christy. So I have to admit, I do not know very much about this book at all. You guys, if you're familiar with my channel, will know that I'm not very good at processing high fantasy synopses without any context, but I do know that this is an adult epic fantasy that is multi-perspective, and I guess I'll find out more about it when I read it, but stay tuned for my reading vlogs if you are interested in this one. I have heard nothing but great things about it, and I really hope that I love it because I love Elliot and I want to support her work. And hopefully our final roll, roll number 6. 9. and adult fantasy. And then the last roll for March, we landed on adult fantasy, which is once again perfect. And this is, I'm wondering if Bookopoly is lulling me into a false sense of security before she destroys me in April, but adult fantasy is perfect because my book club, the Catch Up Book Club, will be beginning our new read along, our 2020 read along in March for the Realm of the Elderling series by Robin Hobb. It's called Elderling Long, and I will link the announcement up here if you guys would like to get involved. But in the month of March we will be reading Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which is the first book in the Farseer trilogy and also the first book in the Realm of the Eldlings. Like with Peace and Turmoil, my knowledge on this series, any of Robin Hobb's series, is pretty limited, but I do believe that our main character in this series is Fitz, who is the bastard prince of a king. That is all I know about this. Robin Hobb is a pretty prolific adult fantasy author. She is very well known and her works are very high regarded, and a lot of people whose reviews I really trust who have read her work really enjoyed it, so I'm very excited to be getting into this one. If you would like to read along with us, we do have a Twitter. Everything is explained in the announcement video. But for the month of March, we will be reading Assassin's Apprentice, and there will be a live show for this on my channel in early April. But that is it for March's Bookopoly, and I am astounded because she was so kind. If you add a Colleen Hoover book onto this pile, this is it. This is all of the books that Bookopoly will have me read in March. I mean, the stack looks pretty chunky, but to be honest, we have 2 graphic novels / manga, which will take me probably a day to read each, if that. 1 young adult fantasy, which I'm not sure about because it's an Owlcrate book, so I have no point of reference of how this is going to be. We have 2 epic fantasy, but they are pretty much the only solid chunky books I have to read in March. And then we have a Colleen Hoover, and I read 2 Colleen Hoover books in February and they took me a day each. So I don't know what I'm going to be doing with myself in March. I think I'm probably going to do a lot of mood reading, which is difficult for me, so March may not be a very good reading month for me book total wise without Bookopoly to push me forward. But yeah, I am very happy with this. I'm happy with how this turned out. So that is it for this month's Bookopoly. Please let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, and please let me know whether your TBR was nice or nasty to you in March. But that's about it for this video, so please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you will find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.